In the games we love, often the most memorable quests are also the darkest. Stories of pain, loss, and tragedy that teeter on the very edge of insanity. So today, we are diving into the darkest quest lines in video games of all time. Many that will bring back haunting memories, and others you likely have never heard of. Because ironically, while most of us play games for fun, it's stories like these that keep us talking about them for years to come. The Red Dead Redemption series is not only one of the highest selling of all time, but also one of the most beloved. And a big reason for that comes down to the amazing stories told in both the main and side quests, including tons of dark and mature themes about love, sacrifice, and of course, redemption. But out of all of the quests in these massive open worlds, maybe the most impactful and dark is also one of the simplest. In Red Dead Redemption 1, when wandering around near Thieves' Landing as John Marston, you can stumble upon an old man named Billy West bent over gathering flowers. He explains it's his 50th anniversary with his wife Annabelle, and that it would be super helpful if you could gather some rare flowers to help make a surprise bouquet for his wife. On the face of it, it's your bog-standard fetch quest, where you have to travel around the map in search of wild feverfew and red and desert sage. For most players, this is where the story ends, because running around the Wild West as a cowboy gathering flowers is about the least fun thing you can do in this game. But for those patient and diligent enough to find the blossoms, they are rewarded with one of the darkest and most unexpected endings to a quest in the entire series. Upon reaching Billy West's cabin with flowers in hand, he thanks you for the trouble and invites you inside to have some tea with him and his wife. But when you enter the lonely cabin in the woods, rather than seeing his wife making tea, you're met with this scene.
It's my other half, lovely Annabelle.
Much obliged.
This man helped me find these lovely flowers, Annabelle. Not half as lovely as you.
Yeah, no, you don't look a day over 30, ma'am.
Wait, it's the fine air and the good living up here in New Austin that keeps us so young and full of vigor. Annabelle was mentioning she wants to go up to Blackwater, ride one of those newfangled motor cars. Huh? No bumpy old horse carriage for my angel.
That's a good idea, Billy. I should get going.
Well, you haven't had your tea. And Annabelle baked her special blackbird pie.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Billy. I must have forgot. I've got an appointment with Planet Earth. Nice to meet you, ma'am.
Farewell, John. Stop by any time. Oh, we play bridge on Thursdays.
For Billy West, the death of his wife was so heartbreaking and tragic that he quite literally has lost his mind. For an unknown amount of time now, Billy is sat alone in this cabin tending to the corpse of his wife whom he was married to for decades. Unable to process the death, Billy has fallen deeper and deeper into psychosis at the hands of pathological grief, a stark reminder that love can be powerful enough to change our lives completely, and a dark realization for a man who has nothing left, alone in the woods. And while many of the upcoming quests on this list will be more scary in the traditional sense, I wanted to start with this one because there's just something so somber and sad about seeing a man so full of life and joy be completely captured by a fake reality and tragic past, for the loss of the one person in life he held so dear. And it's a perfect example of how the darker parts of games don't always have to be violent or crazy. Sometimes it's those slower moments that leave the biggest impact on all of us. On the surface, Library of Ruina seems like nothing more than your standard deck builder game with a host of weird monsters to fight. But it's when you dig deeper into some of the lore behind these monstrosities in quests like Lovetown where things start to get truly horrifying. For those of you who don't know, the setting of Library of Runia is a far future dystopian megacity with 26 distinct districts. Within each of these districts are what is called a wing, the wealthier subsection controlled by a megacorporation creating advanced technology, and the surrounding backstreets where citizens struggle to survive day to day. In the lore of the game and its prequel, Lobotomy Corporation, we learn about many human beings that were distorted into monsters using a force called light, after which an AI created what is known as the library, where it captures guests' minds using this new light power and transfers them into books in order to learn their knowledge and gain power. In the Library of Runia, we play as part of this librarian's staff, who invite guests inside and challenge them to duels for books in which the loser is transformed into a book from which you can read their memories. The quest Lovetown happens to be us diving into one of these books, which contains the memories of some particularly demented souls whose story goes as the following. On a regular day like any other, citizens of the city boarded a brand new train from the megacorporation Warp Corp, which had finished development on a technology that allowed their trains to travel from one location to another in just 10 seconds using a portal. Ostensibly, this ride starts without a hitch for everyone on board, and when 10 seconds pass with no ending to the ride in sight, passengers don't immediately panic as the advertisements were probably just a little bit off and exaggerating as always. But then, an hour passes, then 5, 10, 100. All across this massive train in the different carts, we see visions of memories of passengers starting to panic and scream, until one particular man loses his cool and slits his throat in front of the entire train cart, kids and parents alike. Blood gushes from his neck onto nearby passengers and the cart walls, but rather than bleeding out and dying, the man's neck instead contorts into a comically elongated frame as he gurgles and gushes his way through sentences, struggling to die, but unable to, for hours. As the remaining passengers work to move the almost alien life form to the back of the train to quarantine him off, word gets out about the altercation. And it becomes clear that not only are the passengers trapped on this train, but they have lost their ability to die as well. No one feels hunger, no one can physically die, and there is no end to this train ride in sight. Over the course of the coming years, more and more passengers descend into madness, clawing away at their skin and eyes to at least feel something in this infinite prison, as cart by cart devolves into full-on warfare and the rise and fall of different factions and gangs. Towards the back of the train, those called the Afflicted gather, people who have lost their minds and souls and now stew and brood in darkness and blood. While towards the front half of the train, carts are full of human beings that have not lost their minds yet, years into this journey. But in order to fight back against the growing number of monstrosities in the back of the train, the passengers in the front carts, under the direction of a doctor, devise a plan. The only way to fight back against these warring skeletons and flesh heaps is to become a being even stronger themselves. In the memories we see from the book in the library, the doctor tells some of his patients everything will be all right. And then we cut forward almost 2,000 years. So long now from its original departure, the train now sits in a deafening silence, with almost every cart empty and barren, blood covering the walls, flesh and bones sticking to the seats, and a low hum of the train moving against the tracks as it stirs. But then you see it, in the final cart, the Lovetown. Over thousands of years, the passengers of the train slowly lost their minds, becoming violent degenerates while the doctor and survivor worked towards the front. The doctor decided that the only way to save everyone was to join them together as one, as a being of utter love and devotion, and thus Lovetown was born. He began by stitching two lovers together into a flesh mound to help the others, but over time more and more people had to be added in order to make the monster a stronger beacon of love, until each and every passenger on the cart was either willingly molded into this creature or forcibly shackled to its exterior. And then, just as all hope seems to be lost, the train arrives at its station, and miraculously, all passengers exit 10 seconds after they originally boarded without a single memory of what happened. Because you see, in actuality, Warp Corp in the city was conducting experiments on the passengers of this train by sending them into an alternate dimension where not only could they not die, but time passed slowly, around 2,000 years for every 10 seconds in the main world. So what for most people outside the train looked to be passengers simply stepping on board thousands of miles away and then appearing mere seconds later, was actually Warp Corp torturing and experimenting on them for thousands of years before resetting their minds and bodies to their original state and letting them off as if nothing happened. It's without a doubt one of the single darkest quests in video game history, especially when you consider many people who pick up this game probably thought they were just going to be playing a fun 2D deck builder game with an anime art style, but instead, they're met with existential dread and tragedy. And now for our next dark quest, we need to turn to yet another futuristic dystopian city full of horror. While most of the quests on this list are dark primarily for the gruesome nature of the stories they tell or the haunting twists that you can never forget, the quest Find Working Class Husband from Disco Elysium is dark in a much more mundane, albeit strikingly haunting way. Early on in the game, you can stumble upon an elderly woman sitting outside the Martinez bookstore named Billy Magine, who waves you down asking for help. Her husband, a seasoned drinker, has not been seen for some time now, and after insisting to her directly that he could be missing, she asks you to search for him. Sadly, no matter how much you try to find this poor man early on, he simply is nowhere to be found, but the reasons for this soon make themselves clear. You see, in Disco Elysium, after day 3 in game, an eastern portion of the map opens itself up to players for exploration, and it's here we can find the working class woman's husband after so much effort. Sitting alone on a bench in the biting cold near the shore is a corpse of a now dead man with the smell of alcohol and bottles still in the air. In the pocket of this corpse is a library card, and it confirms the worst possible scenario. This is in fact the husband of the poor old woman you met outside the bookstore, and it now falls on you as an investigator and cop to let her know. If you make your way back to Billy Majine's apartment in Revachol, you can knock on her door and let her know that the police are here, after which she will let you inside without a fuss. When you first come in, you find her sitting on a bed, staring ahead at the wall, waiting for her husband's return. You struggle for some time to say the words aloud, messing with the confines of your mind to find the perfect things to do, yet it never comes. She mentions that she and her husband have 2 daughters, and that they are away at a friend's house tonight, and it only makes the coming moments that much worse. Finally, you compose yourself and utter, "Ma'am, I'm very sorry to say, but your husband, Victor Magine, was found dead on the Martinez boardwalk." In most games, this is where the drama would abruptly peel itself into the scene. The kids would come home early, the elderly woman would scream, and your sidekick cop would bash you. But instead, as with most things in Disco Elysium, the beauty and horror is in the mundane. Billy sits staring ahead, tears welling in her eyes, and asks you a few simple questions. Was he drunk? Yes, you reply. How long was he there? For this question, if you have added enough of your skill points into empathy, your psyche interrupts you and informs you that telling her that her husband sat alone dying in the cold for days would forever stay etched in her mind, and you decide against it. And just as soon as the scene began, it ends. You leave the apartment just as you left it, with the elderly woman sitting alone and afraid on her bed, with the kids coming home in just a few hours to a now broken family. A woman whose entire life has been ripped away right in front of her, whose husband that she loved dearly is now no longer alive to protect not only her, but the children they made, all because of a debilitating addiction that she loved him in spite of. What makes this quest in Disco Elysium so dark is that it feels real. It feels raw, uncut, and utterly tragic. A true look into the calamity that life can be at times, and a stark reminder that at any point in our lives, everything can change in an instant. A dive into real love and the lonely feeling you get knowing you will never be the same. It may not be the most scary or macabre quest in a video game of all time. Funnily enough, it actually might be one of the most straightforward and mundane. And yet, its darkness leaves a mark on you like so few other games manage to do at all. A side quest, an afterthought, an entire story you don't even have to do, a throwaway. that for this woman was everything. Cyberpunk 2077 is a game filled to the brim with absolutely shocking and disturbing questlines. Things like a mayor whose brain is being controlled by people hiding inside his house, a man who crucifies himself in front of a live audience, or even missions where we have to infiltrate explicit braindance facilities where innocent women are kidnapped and forced to undergo torture and abuse. But out of all of the horrific things you are subjugated to throughout Cyberpunk, there is one mission that leaves a mark unlike any other, known simply as The Hunt. Shortly after completing the I Fought the Law questline for the Perales family, an NCPD detective who you worked with on the case, named River Ward, will give you a call asking for help on another problem. If you go downtown to meet with him in person, he shows you police footage of a man being pulled over named Anthony Harris. During this routine stop, a child falls out of the man's back seat onto the floor unresponsive, and Anthony darts from the driver's seat out into the open, after which the cops open fire and send Harris into a comatose state, which he now sits in the hospital. River explains that Anthony Harris is actually the well-known Peter Pan serial killer, who has been kidnapping and murdering children and men for some time now. But River didn't bring you here to celebrate his capture, as he explains that the child that fell out of the car during the stop was wearing his nephew Randy's shoes. You see, Randy has gone missing recently, and with little movement on the case happening, in conjunction with the fact that there's now strong evidence that he may have been kidnapped by Anthony Harris, River begs you to help him find his nephew before it's too late. If you agree to help, you and River immediately head to a nearby NCPD lab to find Harris's file to get more information on him. But while in the facility, you are caught by a medical doctor that agrees to help, explaining that if you can get Harris to start dreaming in his fugue state, you might be able to capture a brain dance of his memories in order to get information on where he's keeping his victims. To find a way to do this, you head to Randy's house to talk with his mother, whom River is not on good terms with, but she agrees to let you search through Randy's things to try and find a way to help. There are multiple clues to discover all around the house, but by far the most important is Randy's laptop, which if you're able to hack into, tells a horrific story. Anthony Harris was messaging poor little Randy for months before his kidnapping, slowly growing closer and closer with the child through manipulation and acting like a friend. Randy, who is a loner with few friends and a handful of bullies, confided in Harris his deepest secrets and desires, which Harris then used to convince Randy to meet him. In the messages back and forth, you can see Randy opening up and becoming more vulnerable and talking about his feelings and thoughts about the world, with no idea that he is being preyed upon and soon to be kidnapped. Outside of just this too, if you navigate to the net on Randy's computer, you can still find an open tab leading to a strange and dark website called Drugs Are Bad that contains a hidden link that directs users to yet another secret page. Called Tony's Shelter, this website is secretly a trap laid by Harris, which is described as a place full of friends and animals alike that all should come to, and likely where Randy is sitting right now. If you dig more around this website, you can come across a corrupted file named ATT Cart Video, which when played is a simple cartoon of a farmer tending to his cows in the barn with a creepy tune. River immediately realizes that this strange video might hold significance to Harris, and suggests that you both use it as a way to spark memories that you can dive into. And lo and behold, after this short interaction, River will come back with good news. Post the video being played next to his ear, Harris is dreaming, and the NCPD medical doctor you met before has captured some brain dance footage you now need to scroll through. On the videos, you relive the haunting memories of Anthony Harris's childhood, watching as he is ruthlessly bullied and picked on at school by students and adults, with his only friends in the world being the livestock at the farm he grew up on, which manifest as visions that drive him mad with terror and anger. Back at home on the farm, things fare even worse. His father beats and berates him, leaving Harris alone and afraid on the ground as he cries and begs for mercy. And finally, in the last brain dance we get to scroll, we get a short glimpse into Harris's adult life as well. We see him sitting alone at first in a small room, watching the cartoon video from before on a TV screen. He slowly gets up and makes his way through a deserted barn until in the distance you can hear the faint sounds of a struggling man. As Harris rounds the corner, a horrific scene unfolds. One of Harris's victims is pulling themselves across the floor in pain, their body obviously broken by torture. Harris grabs the man just as he makes it outside and lunges him back in, laughing and caressing his face like a lion stalking its prey. It's here the video cuts off, but if you manage to find enough clues in the environment while snooping around, you can deduce that this scene is most likely taking place at the Edgewood farm in the Badlands. River, wanting to waste no time, bolts off towards the farm to save Randy, and it's here we finally get to unravel the extent of the horrors that is Anthony Harris's mind. All around the farm are explosives and defenses, but if you manage to carefully navigate your way through them, you can find the exact same barn from the brain dances, but this time inside lies utter tragedy. Hooked up to giant cattle feeding machines with brain dance interfaces are countless children and men with masks over their faces that make them look like diseased victims. Their bodies sit lifeless on operation tables sat in between animal pens, resulting in a scene that looks more reminiscent of a horror movie than any open-world game. As you piece together what's happening here, it becomes clear that Harris has been bringing his victims into his childhood barn, where he sedates them and hooks them up to advanced brain dance machines, which have trapped victims in an endless loop of watching visions of Harris's past, forced to relive what he went through as a child as punishment to the world. Some of the bodies are bloodied and mutilated as well, implying that Harris might even have eaten certain subjects alive as they sat unable to move, forced to endlessly watch another man's tortured childhood. Imagine being a young boy, chained inside this barn, unable to see, living out the most horrific dreams imaginable as your body decays and decomposes while withering away. It's truly one of the darkest quest lines I've ever seen in a video game, which shows just how mature this medium can really get, especially when you consider you have to approach this entire quest from a first-person perspective. But it also shows why I think Cyberpunk 2077 is such a landmark game. A piece of art that doesn't stray away from tough topics that genuinely leave a lasting impact on you. And speaking of dark quest lines that have a lasting impact, we have a lot more where that came from. On the surface, Amori seems vibrant, charming, and whimsical. It centers around a young boy named Sonny who lives in Fairway Town with his friends and family, as we get to see just how happy he is being around those who love him. But beneath this indie art style veneer lies a deeply troubled child with a horrifying past that throughout the game slowly creeps its way into the player's psyche. You see, as the plot of the game unfolds, you discover that not everything is as happy as it originally seems. At night, when Sonny goes to bed, he is taken over by an alter ego named Amori in his dreams, who is overcome by a quest to find Sonny's missing best friend, Basil. As time progresses, the dream world of Amori, known as Headspace, becomes more and more dark and twisted, with strange colors and imagery filling the screen and small glimpses of the past jutting into memory. It becomes increasingly clear that Sonny is a troubled child, and that his dreams must be a way for him to cope with and repress something truly dark. The main story of the game takes players on this journey to discover what that something is, and trust me when I say it will leave you speechless. But not only the final reveal of this game is terrifying, as many of the other smaller quests or missions you go on see the player tackling very chilling subject matter constantly. In the back half of the title, for example, when Amori makes his way to a location known as Black Space, the deepest and most evil portions of Sonny's psyche, we at one point stumble upon the Punishment Room. Inside this strange place is nothing but a small industrial room with a giant cat butler inside, and in the center, an operating table with a cat. If you approach the peculiar butler figure, they simply state, "Mewo has been very, very bad." After this, if you walk up to the table with the cat on it, you will be met with the following prompt. Mewo stares at you. She does not know what is happening. And then, the chilling part, as the game simply states, do you want to cut open Mewo, yes or no? If you select yes, Mewo will tilt her head in curiosity and confusion. And over again, you must select yes, 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 as the cat grows more and more frightened and terrified at the bloodthirsty look in your eyes. This horrifying dance carries on for some time until Amori takes the knife, rage filling their soul, and cuts the cat wide open into a bloody mess on the table. It's an absolutely gut-wrenching scene, and one that, despite how disturbing the game can be up to this point, can throw many players off, while also emphasizing the extent to how disturbed this child and his mind really are, further prompting players to figure out why. Because within the deepest confines of Sonny's mind lies a quest about his deepest desires. Desires to kill, to murder innocent beings, and torture their souls. The only way out of killing poor little Mewo in this quest is actually for Amori to turn the knife on himself in the dream, forcing Sonny in the real world awake from a nightmare. Truly, it's one of the most unexpected and dark twists in a quest in a game, about a literal child and their twisted dreams involving a cat and a knife. It often feels like some of the most disturbing and awful things in video games came from the late 90s and early 2000s. And to prove this point, we have a very unsettling quest from a cult classic, Arcanum, simply known as the Renard Siamese Twins. The quest begins with Benjamin Gershwin, Toronto University's resident phrenologist who is seeking help finding a pair of twin skulls that have been stolen from the local cemetery. For those of you who don't know, in the 19th century, the setting Arcanum takes place in, phrenology was a popular study of human cranium sizes and shapes to determine mental capacity and ability. And for some reason, Benjamin seems particularly interested in what these skulls have to offer, but won't share more. If we indulge his intrigue, we're able to uncover a matchbox in the mausoleum of the cemetery in the university addressed to the Wellington Gentlemen's Club. And if we make our way to that establishment, we can find a bartender there named Sir Matt de Cesar, who acts very suspicious and threatens you if you bring up the skulls. Eventually, later on in the game, if you talk with a half-orc named Thom Grak, the topic of de Cesar comes up and he will ask you to deliver a message to the hostile bartender. During this courier mission though, an assassin will try to kill de Cesar in cold blood, but it's here he reveals that he is not actually a drunk, but rather a trained fighter using bartending as a ruse. After dispatching the assassin, if you convince de Cesar that you were not involved with the killing attempt and instead have come bearing only the special message, he will ask for one final favor, infiltrating a warehouse on the docks to retrieve the original Siamese twin skulls, which he also is looking for, just like the phrenologist Benjamin. After copious amounts of battling your way through ogres and dock leaders, you eventually can find the skulls you have been after this entire time and deliver them back to de Cesar. Cesar explains that the skulls belong to a strange conspiracy revolving around an underground breeding program, and are the key to unlocking the secrets he and his organization are trying to understand. He instructs you to bring the skulls to another one of his team members named Arthur Tyron, where you learn even more about the insanity of what is going on behind these strange skeletons and just how deep this conspiracy goes. Arthur explains that they have reason to believe that the gnomes have been kidnapping human women in the middle of the night and force breeding them with ogres in order to produce half-ogre bodyguards to protect them against society. You see, in the world of Arcanum, gnomes are often prosecuted and subjugated to intense prejudice and ridicule, meaning it would make logical sense they would try something like this, but just rumors and conjecture aren't enough to form a full opinion. We need proof. If you pay a ship captain to take you all the way to nearby Half-Ogre Island at any point in the game after this part of the quest, you can find an abandoned island overgrown with vegetation with a single large rundown warehouse in the middle. Inside the warehouse, we finally find the smoking gun. In the center of the room are large scientific contraptions with breeding machines, strange markings on the wall, human and ogre bones and bodies, and a cacophony of whines from the ghosts that have been tortured here. On one of the counters is a journal which fully reveals the truth of this heinous breeding program. But sadly, this is where the quest stops, and all we can do after this point is return to Arthur without any further explanation. Or in other words, an entire conspiracy in this steampunk fantasy world which has themes of torture, kidnapping, and forced species breeding implies one of the most common races we see in the game is actually the bastard result of an experiment with kidnapped people. Who are the gnomes responsible for this program? Where have they gone? Are there other programs like this happening in the shadows of Arcanum? And what does this mean for the currently living half-ogres who can now reproduce through normal means due to their population having reached an inflection point? It's one of the darkest questlines in video game history that we never get any real answers to, making it all the more mysterious and concerning the more you dive into it. Entire portions of the community have even made mods that add on to this story because so many players wish there was more to it. And it's also a reminder of how tragic story building and world building in games like Arcanum can make them so much better. By today's standards, and even standards at the time, Arcanum was and is a very clunky game to play, which means the main reason you go back is for the absolutely fascinating storytelling and lore, like this. Continuing on our theme of disturbing quests from amazing CRPGs, we need to talk about a truly dark mission from the first Pillars of Eternity called Blood Legacy. Received early on in Act 2 in Direford Village, players can talk with Lord Herond, who explains that his daughter, Ailise Herond, has recently gone missing and needs your help to find her. The Lord is understandably distraught about the situation, but if you decide to help him, things quickly go from just concerning to batshit insane. As you start to question villagers around the town about what might have happened, many will immediately show concerned expressions and become unresponsive, while others give hints about some rumors circulating around town, including the fact that Ailise recently became pregnant and may have ran away. But all throughout the investigation, something just feels off. Strange and cryptic notes all around town, weird village folk, and the looming sense that we as the player are missing out on something. Eventually, one of the men you can question, named Trigil, tells us that Ailise was captured by an ogre near the village. But if we actually travel to the ogre ourselves and question him, he promises that he's never encountered this girl and comes off as a fairly nice guy. So when we return to Trigil to confront him about the lie, he will immediately attempt to kill us with the help of his friend, who we can both easily dispatch. Obviously, Trigil is likely related to the kidnapping now in some way, but it's here where things really start to delve into the truly dark. Hidden inside Trigil's shop is an entrance to a massive underground tunnel network constructed around a temple to Skane, god of secret hatred, resentment, and violent rebellion, often seen as the single worst of the entire pantheon in Pillars of Eternity. Within the twisted and claustrophobic walls of horror beneath this shop are dozens of worshippers to the god, many of whom live double lives, partially in town with their families and partially deep underground, performing a sadistic ritual. As you fight your way further and further into the bowels of this dungeon, you eventually find yourself in a striking circular room, where at the center is an animancer and leader of the cult, Wymund. Wymund explains that Ailise Herond is actually not the Lord's daughter, but rather his niece, and that the rumors of a pregnancy are in fact true. Horrifically though, the pregnancy is actually at the hands of the Lord himself, a man who abused and assaulted the child of his own sibling and is doing everything he can to get her back before the truth gets out. Due to the Hollowborn crisis taking place in the Deerwood, an affliction which is causing children to be born without souls, Lord Herond sought a way to possibly continue his lineage with an heir. And doing the unthinkable against his own family, an incestual assault, was his final attempt to do so. Wymund expounds further, saying that he and his other cultists are nearing completion of a grand ritual which will transform Ailie's mind into a cauldron of killing and torture, which, like a sleeper agent, will allow her to integrate back into her life with Lord Herond before killing him and his entire family while they sleep. For Wymund and the Skane cultists, this is the only form of redemption against a royal family that is causing so much harm in the Deerwood region of Aora, the world of the Pillars of Eternity setting. So now we as the player are left with a couple of options, but no happy ending. We could kill the cultists and return Ailise home to her demented family, even with a wiped memory if we are a healing class, but this will only further perpetuate the cycle of hatred and anger further. If we kill the cultist and let her go free, she will be alone with little chance of survival in the woods and a harrowing past that will likely lead to her ruin or other people being hurt. And if we side with the cultists completely, an entire royal family will be slaughtered, including some innocent people, all in the name of a god that is frequently regarded as the most evil in the entire universe. Really, everything about this quest from the first Pillars of Eternity is so dark. The setup, the reveal, the themes of familiar abuse and dark cultist sacrifices, along with a deeply philosophical question of what to do in a hopeless situation. Blood Legacy just has it all. And it's a great reminder of not only how dark the Pillars of Eternity universe can get, but how compelling it can be because of that. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you play the first Pillars of Eternity especially. It's a game that took me dozens of tries to finally get into and not hate the combat and feel, but once you figure it out, it has one of the most fascinating worlds ever put to a game. Lisa the Painful is a strange game in an even stranger setting. In this universe, all women have mysteriously vanished due to an unexplained event called the White Flash, which has left only men to survive in a now much more ruthless world. The main protagonist, Brad, had a younger sister who took her own life before this event as well, which has left him in a state of utter shock and loathing for some time. Miraculously though, Brad discovers a young hiding girl post the White Flash event, and because of how important women are now to the future of the species, and due to the loss of his own sister and his guilt feeling like he should have helped more, he dedicates himself to making sure this young girl survives in a wasteland full of ruthless men. For months, he shelters her and hides her from the outside world, not letting anyone else see her, until sadly, she runs away while Brad isn't looking, yearning to have freedom and to discover the world for herself. The entire game's narrative revolves around getting this young girl back, but partway through the quest, we stumble upon one of the most memorably dark quests in a video game in some time: Russian Roulette. After being captured by a group of bandits and dragged into an underground den, Brad and his group of companions are forced to engage in illicit gun duels where a revolver is aimed at a victim and fired, giving those tied up a 1 in 6 chance of being shot and killed. In most games, this would be where a big set piece starts and you and your companions all save one another and the day. But as you might have guessed by the name, Lisa the Painful isn't that type of story. Instead, you have to personally select 3 of your companions that you've grown close to over hours of journeying to literally put their lives on the line and potentially be murdered in cold blood in front of everyone. For each of the companions you choose, if they do end up being killed, because of the permadeath mechanic in-game, they are actually gone forever, and you lose them for the entire rest of the run through the game. And as if things couldn't get any worse as well, you actually are able to come back to this location out of your own volition later and sacrifice more of your companions on purpose in order to get some very rare and powerful loot at the expense of your own humanity. And really, what makes this quest such a dark and memorable one for me is the idea that we are the ones making the decision. Not a decision of which companion to bring on a mission or which to allow themselves to make a heroic sacrifice like in Mass Effect 1, but instead who has to just carelessly throw their lives away and potentially never be seen again. It's death for death's sake, for pure entertainment and sadism, no meaning or goal behind it. And speaking of torture for pure entertainment, we need to talk about yet another quest from a game many of you likely have never played. Based on the famous short story from Harlan Ellison, written in 1967, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a game adaptation about an ultra-sadistic and evil supercomputer called the LI Master Computer, or AM for short. Day after day, AM tortures and mutilates a handful of human beings that have been held captive after the fall of Earth as a sort of test and sick form of pleasure. And in the game specifically, we get to play as multiple of these human beings who have to try and overcome the sentient machine. One of the victims, named Ellen, has a specific quest in the game related to her past trauma, which AM has been using to forcefully exploit her. Years ago, while trapped inside an elevator, a creepy man inside wearing a large yellow uniform held Ellen against her will against the side of the elevator and had his way with her, while she was helpless to do anything but scream and cry. Ever since the traumatic event, Ellen has had a debilitating fear of the color yellow, along with extreme claustrophobia and anxiety, which has resulted in her pulling away from others into the dark confines of her own mind. Trapped inside the hell of AM, Ellen is forced into a massive golden pyramid, with bright yellow walls and corridors that slowly squeeze until a human frame can barely fit. Inside this strange prison, Ellen must solve puzzles and escape traps as the world caves in around her. inducing her mind into a hysterical mess with entire rooms adorned in bright yellow splashes of color. As if it couldn't get any worse as well, at the very end of the quest, Ellen finds herself in an exact replication of that original elevator, after which it gets stuck, and as you would guess, a monster wearing a giant yellow suit appears to assault her. Immediately, Ellen freezes in fear at the impending assault, and it's our job as the player to help her overcome that fear and fight back in order to beat the monster. If you do so, Ellen manages to overpower her terror and escapes from the never-ending maze of the pyramid, once again free to try and stop Am with her other human compatriots. But all in all, not only is this quest especially dark, considering the subject matter on hand, but it's especially surprising considering that it originally released in 1995, when controversial topics like these in video games were practically unheard of in comparison to nowadays, and could lead to entire campaigns against the medium as a whole. For any of you who have read the original short story by Harlan Ellison as well, the quests in this video game might be the best representation of how horrifying that story really is, and captures the utter Lovecraftian horror that Am and their endless domain of pain can become. Mass Effect is one of my favorite video game universes of all time. It has multiple unique alien races, thousands of years of fascinating lore and politics behind the galactic structure, and just really cool sci-fi concepts that light your imagination on fire. And as with all good sci-fi worlds, there are a lot of strange and dark things creeping in the corners of the galaxy, including maybe one of the most disturbing quests in the entire series, known as Overlord. In this DLC side quest for the main game, Commander Shepard receives information on board his ship the Normandy about a Cerberus top-secret research facility that has gone dark. But due to the shady nature of this organization and the research happening in the facility, simply dubbed as Project Overlord, it's imperative Shepard and his crew make it to the planet to solve any crisis that may be afoot urgently. When you first arrive, the entire facility is barren, with a strange artificial face on some of the screens begging for mercy and making disturbing sounds. Eventually, you make contact with the lead researcher at the facility, Dr. Gavin Archer, who explains that they have been testing a new virtual intelligence and human hybrid that is meant to allow control over the Geth. For those of you who don't know, in Mass Effect, the Geth are a race of hostile networked artificial intelligences that work together in large numbers as one of the main enemies you fight in the series. Project Overlord is a top-secret program from Cerberus to try and exploit the Geth's almost religious tendencies by crafting an all-powerful virtual intelligence interface which can speak to them directly and trick them into trusting it, all while human mind is secretly controlling it from behind. In order to accomplish this, Gavin Archer's autistic brother, David, volunteered to be melded with the machine due to his high aptitude for math. But post-melding, David's brain went into overdrive, and the entire facility bursted into chaos, with almost all scientists besides Gavin now dead, and the VI monster trying to use a local communications dish to beam itself off-world onto other planets. As Commander Shepard, your first task is to stop this from happening, which results in multiple fights across the facility until you blow up the tower. But the true darkness of this mission is only just beginning. Next, in order to stop the VI from hatching a new scheme, Shepard makes his way towards the actual core itself, which is where the rest of the story unfolds. Inside the facility, you must fight hordes of Geth and digital constructs of David's mind and psyche, which reveal to you visions of the past. David, Gavin's own autistic brother, has been groomed for months on end as a salvation for the project, as the only mind in the galaxy that could take on such an important task of an organic mind molding into that of a machine. What at first was David volunteering his services to help out of his own volition eventually cascades into Gavin forcibly making David merge his consciousness with the artificial construct, after which we find this horrific scene. Deep inside the research facilities for Project Overlord is David Archer imprisoned in an almost medieval contraption of pain and torture. His hands and arms are pierced by metal wires that hold them in place, while multiple large tubes stick out of his mouth at all times. He lies suspended in air, with an entire apparatus around his head forcing his eyes open, which has transformed his pupils into a crimson red, signifying the immense pain he must be under. For an unspeakable amount of time now, David has sat chained in the center of this room, as mechanical limbs tear away at his body and his mind is slowly devoured from the inside out, molding into a digital format to speak with the ghost inside the machine. It's almost like a scene out of a Saw movie, and comes as an utter shock to most Mass Effect players who up to this point haven't seen anything quite on a horror level like this. But now it's up to us to decide what happens next. Because with the true extent of Gavin's transgressions towards David revealed, we in regular Mass Effect fashion can choose to either be the good guy and take David to a care facility away from torture, or go the full renegade route and allow Gavin to keep David here and experiment on him further, on the off chance that they really can find a way to control the Geth who are taking over the galaxy. It's a tragic ending to an already tragic story, but it's really in retrospect that this quest hurts the most. David was nothing more than a gentle young man betrayed by his belief in science and the need for progress. In the visions we saw of David from before, we were shown how loving and helpful he was, unaware of how much harm the other scientists around him were willing to commit, all in the name of having their names on papers that would soon be published. They exploited his conditions to trick him into servitude just because he wanted to fit in and make others like him. And as a result, he now must live the rest of his life with a mind on the verge of collapse at any moment. A truly dark quest with an emotional gut punch and crazy reveal at the end. The main story of Nier Automata has not only one of the most fascinating concepts and worlds in video game history, but also one of the best twists in the medium as well. But not only the main story of this beloved game is home to striking reveals, as there actually is a much smaller side quest you can find while playing as 9S called Amnesia, which has a much simpler, albeit very dark twist of its own. Inside the city ruins, you can find a Resistance member hiding out who explains that they have lost their memory in an explosion and need help finding their father's killer. For those of you who haven't played the game, Resistance members are androids who are fighting on behalf of humans in space trying to retake Earth from machines created by aliens. And this specific android sends you on a quest to find hidden logs and clues as to what happened to their close friend. As you uncover more and more evidence, small glimpses of the killer can be found in a red hood, along with the harrowing story of how the other Resistance fighters were slaughtered after being shot point blank in the head. But the truly dark portion of this quest comes right at the very end. When hacking into more data in a flight pod, you discover that the android's friend's killer is actually none other than herself. In one image, you see the android standing above her friend with a sword and blood everywhere, with an expression that can only be described as devoid of emotion. If you dive into the clues deeper, it actually becomes clear that this android is a Type E executioner unit, which was secretly embedded within the Resistance to root out traitors and stop them. Despite being best friends, when this android's compatriot revealed the truth, her internal programming activated and she had to sit inside the confines of her own mechanical mind as her body ruthlessly slaughtered a person that they loved before their eyes. As a result of the trauma and grief from this event, the android chose to wipe their memory completely, which resulted in them being confused about why their friend had even died, leading to them seeking for help in finding answers. And lo and behold, the person that this android has been hunting down, the one she hates the most who killed the only person she loved, was actually her all along. And it's in this valley of deep sadness, and the void forming in her eyes, that you step away and leave the android to stew in their own personal hell, with no further information about this quest ever surfacing again. A truly dark ending to a dark quest. If there's one thing I've learned about Bethesda games as of late, it's that oftentimes the community crafting mods for the titles makes better content than Bethesda themselves. And in the case of Enderall, a total conversion mod for Skyrim, this couldn't be any more accurate. It has improved combat, writing, role-playing, and systems with actual depth. But maybe my personal favorite aspect of this Skyrim 2.0 is how dark and involved some of the quests can get. And maybe the best example of this is the Dark Chambers of Our Mind finale to the Roulette questline. In the game, the Roulette are a religious faction based out of a temple in the main city known as the Ark. Amongst other strange practices, they are known for kidnapping children and using them in strange experiments deep underground away from prying eyes, with countless rumors about why this is happening. You see, in Enderal, there is a massive network of underground tunnels and societies called the Undercity, and it's here where most of the Roulette questline takes place. The start of Dark Chambers of Our Mind sees us as the player going on a mission with a cultist named Thariel, in service to the leader of the Roulette, a figurehead called the Father. After fighting your way through an entire temple dungeon full of traps and enemies, Thariel kills another one of the cultists in cold blood without warning, and tells you that they need to talk to the Father without distraction, after which they summon a portal to bring Father to both of you where there now are no reinforcements. As a child, Thariel was taken in by the Father and his religious cult, and was tortured for days on end until eventually assimilating into the faction, where it's revealed that they now plan to finally get revenge on Father for what he has done. In a strange twist of fate though, Father tells Thariel that yes, he did torture them as a child, but that he had a good reason. It's revealed that every one of the children abducted and taken to the refuge where the torture Thariel experienced occurred was actually afflicted with an ailment known as the foulness. We don't get too many deep specifics on what this condition is exactly, but suffice to say we do know it would have almost certainly guaranteed the deaths of all those sick within just a couple of years, meaning the children with the foulness would have never lived to see adulthood. In order to stop this, Father initiated ritualistic experiments into soul transference, in order to try and move children's souls from one body to another without the foulness, so they could live longer and happier lives. In most of these experiments, the operation would leave the afflicted with bouts of estrangement, where the mind and soul detach from one another and the new host body rejects the foreign invasion, causing hallucinations, warped personalities, and intense feelings of not belonging. For many of the children that underwent the soul transference under the Father, their minds were left broken and trapped within the new body, which would simply sit endlessly staring off into the corner with an almost eerie look of a melting face. For Thariel though, the soul transference actually went off without any issues at all. The Father's so-called perfect experiment, which resulted in Thariel being able to live a healthy life all the way into adulthood, but still with memories of the heinous experiments from childhood that damaged them. This revelation comes as a shock to Thariel, who had just killed another one of their own cultists in a bid to guarantee they could kill the Father without being stopped. And now with their entire world crumbling before them, we as the player must decide whether to help save the Father and kill Thariel, or team up with them to take the Father down. It's a gut-wrenching end to an already fantastic questline, which puts into question the moral idea of the ends justifying the means. Was what the Father did to those children okay because he was trying to save them? Is the fact that they would have died anyways good enough justification to do the unthinkable? After all, Thariel killed others in order to try and reach their seemingly noble goal as well, so why should the Father not be able to do the same? But then we look back at the children with estrangement, those with souls now trapped in bodies that aren't their own, forever confined to limbo. And it just makes you wonder, because really, this questline has it all. Dark and deep dungeons full of nightmare fuel, a mad religious cult leader kidnapping children, and moral and philosophical implications that will have you thinking about your decisions you make even days later. Even for many gamers who have never played the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines themselves, you likely have heard lots of praise for this cult classic. And a big reason for that comes down to the myriad of memorable quests and encounters that make the game special, especially of the darker variety. In one quest specifically, called A Bounty for the Hunter, we get to see just how twisted this version of Santa Monica really is. You initiate the story by talking with bail bondsman Arthur Kilpatrick, who explains that his best bounty hunter, Carson, has gone missing and he needs to be found. To start the search for Carson, you head over to his apartment with a key Arthur gives you and search around. Not only are there multiple items you can get for upgrades here, but also a key to a local tattoo shop and some notes left on a computer that indicate Carson is hiding out there away from the public. Obviously, the next natural step is to search that tattoo parlor nearby. But strangely, when you get there, Carson is nowhere to be found. instead with only the sound of a telephone ringing incessantly down in the basement. If you force your way downstairs and answer the phone yourself, on the other end is a man named Mr. Gimble, who is asking to speak with the tattoo owner, McGee, who strangely, just like Carson, isn't at the tattoo parlor currently. Mr. Gimble explains that he needs someone for modeling work, but since McGee isn't there, asks if maybe you can fill in for a spot instead, after which you are invited to Gimble's Prosthetics, a small basement studio located at the end of Main Street. Without a doubt, something about this encounter already feels off, and the amount of people not being where they should be is throwing up major red flags. But regardless, if you make your way over to Gimble's Prosthetics and trot your way down a small flight of stairs, you can ring the buzzer and Mr. Gimble will let you inside. Here, you sit down with the doctor as he explains how the modeling shoot will work, before asking you to wait here while he goes to get some of his equipment. If you ignore the request and instead sneak around the establishment while Mr. Gimble is away, you can find a passageway leading down to a small twisted staircase that goes even deeper underground. As you make your way further and further into this peculiar dungeon, things only get progressively more concerning. In the distance, you can hear the faint sound of a man pleading for help, and at the culmination of it all, you appear in a massive operating room of sorts. On the walls are human digits and appendages, with blood painted on the ceiling and the pleading voice now clear as day being Carson locked in a cell. Surrounding Carson as well are multiple other cells, full of dark and twisted torture and human experimentation, including the tattoo shop owner McGee, whose body has been operated on and mutilated to such an extent as to not be even recognizable. The smell of the dungeon is overpowering, and it's isolated even in such a busy town square. Realizing the danger, you look for a way to free Carson from his prison, but just as quickly as you made your way down to this place, Mr. Gimble appears again, this time ready to beat you with a severed arm he is holding in his hand. For most players, dispatching of Gimble and his ferocious human meat arsenal should prove fairly easy, and afterwards you are able to finally free Carson, who tells you that he's quitting the bounty hunter business, and you'll need to go talk to Arthur Kilpatrick to complete the quest. And overall, it just goes to show how terrifying the world of Vampire the Masquerade can really be, full of not just traditional monsters like vampires and ghosts that stalk in the night, but also the normal everyday man and woman who have a monster inside waiting to hurt and torture others. The Dying Light series is full of extremely dark and violent stories that don't pull any punches. But out of all of these, few have as dark a reveal as Chasing Past from Dying Light 1. To start the quest, you must speak with Tarek in Old Town, who has found a traumatized young boy that is barely able to speak. When you inquiry further about the boy's condition, Tarek explains that he simply showed up one day shaking in fear, muttering about his friend Mike, who presumably went missing. The boy has a recorder you're able to take, with Tarek also gleaming where Mike likely went missing, a nearby apartment unit that you can make your way over to in under 5 minutes. But once inside, an eerie sense of quiet takes over, as you start to rummage all around the apartment block while listening to some of the previous recordings of the boy and his friend Mike. On the recordings, you hear the boy talking to Mike about how they are going to be great detectives together, after which Mike darts down into the basement in search of clues for a mystery, and the boy chases after. Through each recording, you can hear the boy become more and more frantic, especially after losing track of where Mike has gone in the basement, until the point in some of the final recordings, we simply hear the boy screaming at Mike, "Where have you gone? Come back, come back." Realizing the urgency of the situation, if you make your way down to the bottom floor of the apartment block, you stumble upon a door labeled 3 with a bloody handprint that is locked. And lo and behold, if you go back upstairs to search for a key, you can find one and come down to unlock the door. And inside, we finally find Mike, or what's left of him. A dog sits on an operating table dissected with their intestines pouring out, and a final recording from the boy plays, this time with him walking to the room and finally finding his friend, which we now know is his dog, lying dead before his eyes. On the recording, the boy screams and wails before it cuts off, and the full realization of why he is so traumatized comes into fruition. But before we as the player have any time to process what exactly has just happened, a hulking brute of a man bursts through the back door and attacks us on sight, leading to a boss battle where we must take down Mike's killer. After finally vanquishing the monster, further investigation leads to the realization that not only is this boy's best friend gone, but his family as well. at the hands of a twisted cannibal that has been preying on unsuspecting victims in an abandoned apartment complex. It's a dark revelation for an already dark world, and the gravity of an animal being abused so gruesomely in front of a young boy is about as twisted as it gets. Surely one of the most impactful quests in this entire series, and just gaming in general. On any list about dark quests in video games, it practically would be impossible not to mention The Witcher. Every single entry in this series has its own host of truly unforgettable stories of pain, loss, and tragedy. And personally, I think it's one of the reasons that The Witcher resonates with so many people, and why the games are beloved to this day. In fact, The Witcher 3, the most celebrated game in the series, might just get its stellar reputation primarily from one early quest that is so tragic it will leave you speechless, simply called Family Matters. The quest begins right at the start of the game in Act 1, with Geralt on the search for his quasi-adopted daughter, Ciri. In order to find her, he enters the palisade hold of Crown's Perch in Velen to speak with the Baron for information. The Baron says that he can help, but in exchange will need Geralt to find his recently missing wife Anna and daughter Tamara. You begin by searching the castle grounds, where you find a host of different clues, including a talisman beneath the floorboards and a doll belonging to Tamara, along with signs of a fight. The Baron explains that he made the doll for his daughter but was drunk the night they disappeared, so he doesn't remember anything about a fight, and then exclaims that you should seek the local peller or sorcerer for information regarding the talisman. After locating the peller and dealing with some of the Baron's men outside his hut, he asks you to retrieve his pet goat Princess, and after you do this, you can have a discussion with him where it's revealed that he did indeed make the talisman for Anna. He explains that Anna was pregnant but had miscarried, likely due to physical abuse at the hands of the Baron, and even worse, the stillborn baby was improperly buried afterwards, leading to the creation of a botchling monstrosity. As the Peller sees it, Geralt now has only two options. Either remove the curse of the botchling by properly burying it under the family residence and giving it a real name with an elven ritual, or kill it outright and bring the blood back to the Peller, who can use the Blood of Kin spell to locate Ciri. When you return to the Baron to share the news, you find him instead in a drunken stupor with a barn on fire. But after potentially saving the barn folk and beating the Baron in a fistfight, he calms down and listens to what you have to say. With an extreme sense of remorse, the Baron finally reveals that the miscarriage and running away was in fact likely due to his daily physical and mental abuse of the family. And what's even more, he was the one who found the stillborn baby and improperly buried it out of shame. As a form of recompense, he begs you to let the stillborn live and to perform the naming ritual. But as Geralt, you have the decision on what to actually do here. If you do decide to help the Baron, you must perform the elven ritual while he holds the botchling in his arms with tears in his eyes, after which a lubberkin will appear above the new grave and lead you to Ciri. If you instead kill the botchling in cold blood, the Baron will disavow you and you can return to the Peller, who will perform his own ritual, which will lead to the same place as the lubberkin. But regardless of which path you take, it's after that you find a fisherman's hut with people inside who recently have met both Anna and Tamara. Tamara has made her way to the town of Oxenfurt, while Anna was carried off by a strange and unknown beast. If you go to speak with the Baron's daughter in Oxenfurt, the Baron will beg you to take a doll with you to show her as a way of saying he is sorry. But no matter what you do, when you do find Tamara in Oxenfurt, she will lambast her father and swear him away, adamant about the abuse she and her mother have had to endure under him. Instead, Tamara is working with the local religious fanatics called the Eternal Flame to set up a rescue party for her mother. And from this point onward, a new series of quests must be completed in order to finish the original Family Matters questline, which only gets more and more disturbing as it goes on. Through all of these meandering quest lines, you eventually discover that Anna didn't really just run away, but rather made a pact with a group of heinous crones, where as a promise to serve them for 1 year of her life, capturing innocent children, they would guarantee her unborn child would never come to term. It's further revealed that many years ago, after the Baron discovered his wife had an external lover, out of spite and vengeance, he killed the other man while his life lived in utter despair. As retaliation, she tried to kill the Baron but failed, and this led to a never-ending cycle of escalating violence and abuse as the Baron would beat his wife and she would conspire against him. So what on the surface seemed like a horrible man doing horrible things was actually an entire family full of tragedy and vitriol, who in their wake left the lifeless body of a stillborn baby sitting in the dirt. It's not only one of the darkest and most well-known quests in The Witcher, but probably all of gaming. A quest about the deep complexities of abuse and anger, about helpless beings being caught in the crossfire, and evil monstrosities lying in wake to take advantage, all with a host of choice and consequence that few games reach the highs of. What began as a simple quest to find a missing person devolves into one of the most tragic stories ever put to a video game. For the final entry on this list of dark questlines and games, we actually are going to turn to an entire title centered around a single questline. A game so disturbing that it was removed from online stores entirely during its release. Called Devotion, this indie adventure game tells the story of a Taiwanese family who have found themselves in hard times, and due to the stress, slowly devolve into utter madness and degeneracy. The protagonist of the story we play is a failed screenwriter named Du Fangyu, who is living in Taiwan in the 1980s with his wife and daughter in a small apartment. Gameplay consists of walking around the different rooms of the apartment throughout the years as you slowly piece together what exactly is going on, all with disturbing sounds and imagery that fill each scene, and many almost psychedelic sections of torture and horror. Small notes can be found all over the environment as well, which tell us more about the family, including the revelation that the man's wife was once a popular singer and their daughter is trying to follow in her footsteps. Sadly though, some sort of anxiety starts to afflict the daughter greatly to the point that she's unable to sing. Local doctors strongly suggest psychiatric care for her, but due to the family's financial struggles, that just isn't an option. As an alternative, Fang Yu's wife suggests that she goes back to work as a popular singer to help make money to keep the family afloat and pay for medical bills. But Fang Yu's insecurities about being the man of the household only flare up, making him intensely jealous that he cannot provide for his family and that he might force his wife to work. Meaning he tells her no and tries to do it himself. And as you search through the apartment in-game more and more, this story unfolds step by step, with still very little explanation for all the demonic things you see around the apartment and why everything's so dark. Through the process of reading and discovering more, slowly it becomes clear that Fang Yu found a solution to the original problem, but in a very non-traditional way. Rather than listening to doctors, by following the teachings of a local cult leader named Mentor Hugh, Fang Yu believes he can heal his daughter of her sickness and save the family. But this only leads to Fang Yu bringing home more and more strange occult paraphernalia as he slowly loses his mind. Seeing what her husband is becoming, Fang Yu's wife leaves him, causing an even further rift in the family as Fang Yu dives deeper and deeper into the madness of his broken psyche. In terrifying psychedelic scenes in the game, we have to watch as Fang Yu literally rips his tongue and eyes out of his body, all while wondering if we are only seeing a hallucination or a real vision of the past. Blood covers the walls as the disturbed man floats in and out of consciousness, while voices can be heard all around him. But then, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, the true horror begins. Fang Yu's daughter asks her father to help her with something, folding origami tulips, since she's convinced that if she covers her room in them, she will finally become healed. But instead, Fang Yu, on the advice of his master Hugh's teachings, performs a dark ritual of submerging his own daughter in a bathtub full of red snake wine. After pushing her into the poison concoction confused, Fang Yu locks the door behind him and leaves his daughter inside for 7 days. In the final scenes of the game, we see Fang Yu sitting alone in the apartment, staring into the void as TV static blares, before the sounds of dogs barking and police banging on the door can be heard and the scene cuts to black. It's one of the most distressing storylines in a game of all time, and only gets more disturbing when you realize it's actually based on very true stories from real-life murder cases in Taiwan where similar things happened, including a man who truly did rip out his tongue and eyes in front of his entire family due to cult rituals. As I mentioned before as well, this game was taken off online stores like Steam as well, but this was actually due to some Easter eggs depicting Chinese General Secretary Xi Jinping in a bad light, which means to now play the game you actually need to get it off the creator's website. But still, there's just something so tragic about literally playing as a man that murders his own daughter while mutilating himself and destroying his apartment in the process that you can't shake. And the ritual, as I call it, might just be the most disturbing quest in full game ever made. But as always, thank you all for watching, and let me know down below what you thought of my picks for the darkest quest lines in video game history, and what you would add as well, as I'm sure there's lots of insane things out there that I don't even know about that a lot of you would like to hear. So as always, until next time.